Today I am joined by a guest. She's a little furry and a little gassy right now. I don't know what you ate, but you're stinky. You probably can't see her, but she is here. So yeah, let's get started with the video. So I wanted to do this video before I got too far removed from my world of IT and security, which has been, I left that job 5 weeks ago. Crazy to me how fast the past 5 weeks have gone. Granted, I've done a lot, so kind of makes sense that time is flying by, but yeah, I don't know if I figured out exactly what I need to figure out yet, but that has nothing to do with this video. This video I wanted to make because, as you guys know, or a lot of you know, I'm a huge reader. I read all the time. I've read, I think, over 40 books this year, which is kind of low for me, but I think is still a good amount, 40 books. And hopefully hoping to hit 50 by the end of the year. I have a billion going right now, so it should be okay. But there are some books that I've read recently that I wanted to share with you all because they are relevant to the topics we discuss in security mostly, and I wanted to share them with you. So there are 5 security related books that I feel like can really teach you some things outside of like a security plus technical book on how to pass a test that's just going to teach you how to memorize some acronyms and types of malware and things of that sort. So these are real world scenario books that will put things into perspective that you may not encounter in your day-to-day, even if you work in security, or if you don't work in security and you're trying to get into security. I feel like these stories, which are real, can really help you get a better perspective of the bigger picture of what's really going on, and may in fact lead you in the direction that you want to go, because security is very wide. There are a lot of areas to go in security, and so one of these books may spur some interest in that specific area, and you may say, hey, I want to do that, and there you go. So this first book is Gray Day by Eric O'Neill, and I read this I think at the beginning of the year. It is about cyber espionage and the FBI, and it's actually the story of how the FBI caught the very first cyber spy inside the FBI. He was a mole in the FBI for a very long time, I think a few decades, and it took them a while to, 1, figure it out, and 2, catch him. And it's an amazingly true story, very interesting. The book literally reads like a spy thriller. Like, you can't even imagine that this is a true story, but it is a true story. I think I read this book in about 1 or 2 sittings because it just reads really well. It's really interesting, and it talks about older systems, older computers, because it was so long ago, and so it's kind of interesting to see how far we've come. So if you're interested more on the cyber espionage side of security, then I highly recommend Gray Day. It's probably required reading if you decide to go that route, but I think it's a very relevant topic and important area of security that you may not even be thinking about, but is definitely a concern. The next book, Breaking and Entering: The Extraordinary Story of a Hacker Called Alien by Jeremy Smith. This is a really cool book about literally a hacker named Alien, and she's a female. It's an awesome story about how she went to MIT, and she literally just kind of fell into hacking, and she learned by doing, which is something I tell all of you all the time, and actually need to take my own advice too. I need to find time to take my own advice, but it's one of the best ways to learn. And so this book kind of talks a lot about diving into things, taking the risks, and forcing yourself to learn by doing the things you need to do. I think this book is great because it teaches a different route of how to go about things. Yeah, she went to MIT and she did learn things there, but she honestly learned more through her curiosity and taught herself how to be a hacker. She learned on the job and doing things, and I feel like that is a very valuable thing to do. You have to take the risks and put yourself sometimes in uncomfortable situations in order to learn and grow, and she does this very, very well. She's in a lot of uncomfortable situations, and it definitely makes her a stronger person. She now has her own security company doing some of the things that she learned throughout her career, and I find it very admirable. Of course, I'm a little biased too. I like the fact that it's about a woman. It's good to see diversity in security. It's not something you always see, so there are other ones out there, and it's nice to see. And once again, I'm not saying anything bad about schooling or taking a more traditional route. I just find that organic learning sometimes is more beneficial. It is sometimes harder to do, but that is often how you're going to learn best. Once again, this book deals with a lot of technical topics. It does have some social engineering and of course hacking. She's a hacker, and learning to code in different environments and putting yourself out there. She definitely does that a lot. It also talks about the stress of the industry, and I think that's important to consider when thinking about security. It is a very stressful industry, stressful job, so self-care is important, and sometimes you have to put yourself ahead of your career just to stay healthy. Regardless, fabulous book. I highly recommend it. I found it incredibly interesting. I read it very quickly. It wasn't a drag at all. Sometimes security books can be somewhat of a drag. None of these 5 are though, so that's good news. The next book is one of which a name you may recognize. This is Ghost in the Wires by Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick is definitely one of the more popularly known figures in security, mostly because he didn't have the best start in security, and he's a convicted criminal. He went to prison for a few years for hacking, and now he owns a company called KnowBe4, which I've personally used and find is fantastic. So he may have had a rough beginning, but it's nice to see that he's come out on top, and now he does speaking gigs and is a major contribution to the security world. So that's nice to see. This book is kind of about what happened in his youth in order to get him into prison. He is definitely a social engineering master. Some might call scammer, but we'll go with social engineering. And it's kind of crazy the things that he used to do. I think this is almost required reading for anyone in security or even outside of security, because it talks a lot about how he tricked people with social engineering. And sometimes that's the most valuable thing, because then it puts it in your head that not everything is authentic. You have to have that doubt in your head in order to believe that doubt is possible, if that makes sense. And I feel like this book kind of gives you a lot of examples of how he went about it and how you can prevent it from happening both in your career and your personal life. Whenever I call a company now or do anything with a company, I'm almost always thinking in the back of my head, is this a scam? Is there some sort of information that they are fishing for? Anything of that sort. So I feel like it's helped me in that way, and hopefully it can help other people as well, to kind of get the word out there. I know that a lot of elderly people are often victims to social engineering, and if we can, teach our parents or grandparents things to avoid in that case, that would be greatly beneficial too, because the less successful they can be, the better off we all are. But I highly recommend this book. My next 2 books are probably my favorite 2 books out of the bunch. All 5 are wonderful, but if you had to choose 2, I would choose the next 2. The first one is Countdown to Zero by Kim Zetter, and this book is fantastic. It is about Stuxnet and what happened to the Iranian nuclear program many years ago, and it is just insane. All of the research that went into this book, all of the technical details. If you studied for Security Plus or you are studying for Security Plus, this book will do a great job of kind of solidifying the things that you memorized, the things that you learned for the test or are learning for the test, because this puts it in perspective of like a legitimate real world scenario of what happened in Iran to the centrifuges in the nuclear power plants. It's absolutely crazy, and Stuxnet is something that I think about fairly often, just because that, to me, is kind of the direction we're going, and it's incredibly frightening. I worry about this probably too much, but what am I gonna do? So if you want to worry with me, I highly recommend this book. It, like I said, it's very technical, but it's also very entertaining. So if you don't have the security background, you'll be okay too, just because it is so fascinating how it all went down, what exactly happened. And it also reads kind of like a true crime kind of thriller. It's just that good. But there is a really important section in here also about vulnerabilities, and how even though Iran was attacked, other countries are very vulnerable to this too, including the United States. We have a lot of infrastructure problems, including in our government, which has been hacked before, and that's something to keep in mind, that this happened to Iran, this has happened to other countries as well, and it's definitely not going to be the last, but it might be a good wake-up call to kind of get things moving faster, if possible. I don't even know, but regardless, I highly recommend this book. And the last and final book, I just finished this a couple of weeks ago. I highly recommend this book, Dawn of the Code War by John P. Carlin, and this book is so dense. Like, can you see all of my bookmarks? I've bookmarked like so many pages in here, and I really want to go back and annotate it, just because there are so many good lessons in here about cyber warfare and how really it is a code war. And even though we are not saying we are at war with specific countries, we as in the United States are at war with specific countries, there's definitely stuff going on behind the scenes that would indicate otherwise. And there are a lot of examples in here that go into exactly what is going on behind the scenes. Things like China and the PLA stealing intellectual property IP from American companies for a very long time before the United States said something and China kind of backed off. But it definitely happened for a very long time, and there are clear examples of stolen IP that now other countries have that the United States initially created, which is very alarming. It kind of makes you think that the United States may not have the advantage, specifically in the military, that it once had. Other examples include one of the first cyber attacks, if not the very first cyber attack, being at the Sands Casino that took down the entire Sands Casino. Very alarming that another country can just do that. Another example is with Russia and the election in 2016. So there's just like a lot of good stuff in here that, once again, similar to the Stuxnet book, will kind of put things into perspective. It's a different side of security in that it's not necessarily about malware and how malware propagates and moves around and infects computers and such. It's more so about the process behind them and how these things are happening and how they're being utilized by other countries to attack their foes and sometimes their friends too. So I highly recommend this book just for a deeper background of what's going on. I don't think the wider public really understands the implications of some of these attacks, and I feel like that's a huge detriment to the country, the people. It's just something that we really should be talking about and maybe not talking about enough. So I highly recommend this book if you just want to be more informed of what's going on. I don't mean to sound like an alarmist, but when you read books like this, it's hard not to be an alarmist because there's so much crazy stuff going on right now that isn't part of the wider discussion, and I feel like it needs to be. So If you want to join the wider discussion, we actually do discuss a lot of these topics on my Twitch stream. My Twitch channel is in my description box below, but it's honestly just the same name as my YouTube, Caitlin V3. If you want to join, I stream 5 days a week, generally starting between 2 and 4 p.m. Pacific, just depending on what my schedule is, when I'm recording videos or working on other things. But we do discuss a lot of these topics. It's not really a gaming stream, it's more of a stream to share ideas, learn from each other, and talk about some of these more important topics. So I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that these books can give you some value outside of the normal websites offering help to study for certain tests, or books that are built like a textbook, or even classroom settings that are there to help you pass a test. I think these books give those real world examples that really set a context that's incredibly important in this day and age. And it's important that you take these things seriously, because this is our future. And a lot of the topics that are discussed in these books are not going to go away. They're going to get bigger. And it's important that we listen now and try to stay as informed as possible. So I'm not saying I know everything, but I am out there reading and learning and trying to learn some things. So hopefully you learned something from this video and maybe have some homework to do or some books to read. You don't have to go out and buy these books. Also look into your local library. Your library will probably have these books on hand where you can take them out for free. I use the digital library service for Los Angeles, and all of my books just get delivered to my Kindle. I don't have to go anywhere or do anything or return anything. It's fantastic. So if you're looking to save some pennies, don't go on Amazon, go to your local library. Thanks so much for watching this video. All of my social links, including Twitter, Instagram, my books, Instagram, Twitch, Goodreads, and my Patreon, are all in the info box below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.